Yes, I work in the University of Vic, Central University of Catalonia, which is about 70 kilometers from here, and it's located in a rural area, which I think is a good thing for a university actually. And I think probably the most important thing I can tell you now is that we are developing a new chair on agroecology and food systems for social transformation, which I am very optimistic it will be a nice point of meeting point for people here in Catalonia, of course in the world, but mainly we want to start the networking with Catalonia because we are a bit like bullets, like a champignon, right? And we want to first create this critical mass of people working on food sovereignty from the academia, right? So we are on this now, but of course all of us, we have international connection and so on, but first we need this critical mass here to be more strong, no? Hello. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to present you first context of what is La Via Campesina for those of you who don't know what it is, food sovereignty and so on, the role of science and all this. And later, and this will be a bit with the PowerPoint and so on, and later I will present some personal experience from which I have taken some notes actually that I'm going to take before I forget. And there I think we can share things and yeah, I mean, of course you can interrupt me anytime, eh? So if you want to say whatever, you can tell me in any moment of this presentation. The truth is that we don't have so much time, no? So 1 hour and a half, and we start 10 minutes late. It's not so much time, but I think it's okay, no? I think the first thing is, I think all people we agree here with the concept of science for people that was developed with, by Funkovic, and you know, this is like minimal point of departure, no? Because otherwise, I don't know what we are doing here, no? So this is minimal point of departure. But of course, when you are looking at, that means that at least you have several characteristics, no? First, you are a critical researcher, so that will be also a minimal thing, no? Because you're critical with everything that surrounds you, even with the alternatives. You know? I mean, being a critical researcher means to be critical all the time. So, of course, critical with main trends of capitalism and so on, because, of course, it's one of the main problems we have already now. But also critical when we are working with food sovereignty and so on. We also need to be critical with food sovereignty. We need to problematize all the time, because it's the way the knowledge also advances, no? Because otherwise we are static and there is no dynamism in what we do, no? And this is common not only for researchers, but I think also for people who work in social movement, that they also tend to problematize quite often, no? The second thing which I think is important is that you are politically engaged. Politically engaged, we all know also what it means. It doesn't mean that you have to be in a political party. It means that you are engaged with policy issues in general, where you live. It can be at different levels, international level, local level, whatever. No? But it also means that you are, you know, you have this, yeah, I mean, this, the need. Once you are critical, you have like a need to politically engage, because in a way, you know, what do you want to be critical for if then you like do nothing, no? So it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a kind of, you know, follow-up thing, like very fluid. It goes like this, no? And of course, you also are politically engaged because you want to transform the society in which you live in, no? You think the society where we live, it's not, I mean, it has a lot of mancances. Yeah, you know, deficits. So you look for social transformation. What is not so common, I will say that most of the people that work with the, you know, with the idea of science with people have at least these 3 characteristics. I will say this is quite common in people that we believe in this concept. What is not so common, or it's not like 100% or people that work with this, is the engagement, unfortunately, with the social movements, right? So, because probably it's the most difficult part, and I will tell you later why it's so difficult, at least in my experience with La Via Campesina, because of course, different movements have different characteristics, and the case of La Via Campesina really is a kind of a monster, you know, of, you know, big machine, very difficult to move with their own, you know, with their own dynamics and engage with this monster in a positive way, of course, is from an academic point of view is a kind of tiring as well, no? It's exciting on the one side, but it's also tiring on the other side, no? So, but yes, we can find many important people and many researchers who are, you know, politically engaged in a way, and they are critical theories and look for social transformation, but then they are not engaged with the roots, social movements from the roots, no? The problem with this, in my opinion, is that, well, I will tell you later of this, no? So more or less, this is what we are going to talk about today. And what I'm going to do now is to contextualize the 3 points for the agricultural case, no? Agriculture and food, which is where I work, and Via Campesina, and food sovereignty, no? Of course, why we are critical researchers? Because we analyze the context, you know, the context of capitalism. We saw all the policies derived from capitalism, and, you know, privatization, free trade, deregulation, the minimal participation of state, individualism, you know, all these characteristics of neoliberal capitalism that, you know, we know it has some impacts, but that we don't like, no? So, and all these characteristics which I have put in here are very clear how they are landed into agriculture. No? In agriculture, I like it very much, the issue of agriculture, because it's very visual. No? In a way, it has been the latest sector, I could say it will be the latest sector that has been incorporated, you know, in this accumulation process of capitalism, like one of the latest sectors to be incorporated in the process, and everything has been very fast. No? So all the impacts, everything that we analyze that has already happened in other sectors, in agriculture has been very fast. No? The same things, but it has been very fast in very few years, and also the alternatives and the responses from social movement has been also very fast and very strong. So I think agriculture and food has these characteristics which I like very much. No? But basically, you know, for you, you know that from the 19th century, more or less, beginning of 20th century, we started with this industrialization of agriculture. But the main thing, it happened already with the birth of the, you know, World Trade Organization, you know, in 1994, and everything after that was exponential. No? And we have all this privatization of all the resources, privatization of water, privatization of seeds, the privatization of land, you know, and that have been brought to a limit to have the privatization of life, no? Like, you know, the patents of life, which is like social movement called to the patents of seeds, no? Because seeds is a life material, no? So it's, this has a lot of consequences, of course. They also, in terms of free trade, you know, we all, you know, have a lot of focus on export agriculture, no? Like the main type of agriculture we have to develop in our countries to promote development and so on, you know, all this discourse. And then, you know, the deregulation of this sector, which has been promoted by the World Trade Organization and kind of, you know, main actors in this thing. Then promoting as well the minimal regulation of a state, you know, in something as important as agriculture, no? Because agriculture, if you don't have policies in agriculture, and agriculture is the main activity that we need to feed ourselves, right? I mean, and food is a right. It's a kind of, it's not something banal, no? It's a kind, it's a food, it's a human right. So it's very important, and try to these deregulation trends that to minimize, which. I'm not going to enter on that, no? Because there is a lot of hypocrisy in this, but because then industrial countries, they know it's important, and so they have a discourse on the side, but then they have practice on the other direction, but this is another thing. And this is where all the individualism, no? That is characteristics of you know, neoliberal, or the capitalist, of general capitalism, that is reflected in supermarkets, for instance, no? You know, the way you buy your food, in supermarkets is very individual. You know, you don't go to a market of a farmer market. You don't go to, you know, to a places where you have a relationship with the person that is selling you the food and that is telling, you know, it's a completely different relationship. And I think the supermarket is very, very visual to see this individualism into the agricultural food sector. No? In a way, what we have is that food is transformed into a commodity. So that means food is not anymore seen as a human right, but just as a commodity. No? And this I'm going to, because this, what I've done is to separate it by food chain, no? In the inputs part, food production, but just for you to have an idea, no? So in the terms of inputs, we have some impacts, like in energy we use a lot of petrol. It's an agriculture which is dependent on petrol, fossil fuel energy. So in many different parts, no? In organic fertilizers, in machinery, pesticides, and so only in the production part, in the transformation also, in the conservation also, but also in the consumption, because normally we move with the car to buy our food, to go to the supermarket and so on. So it's a kind of, petrol dependent. In terms of water, we have a very intensive use of water. The water is contaminated, so the implications of agriculture and food is very important. And actually, in terms of energy, I didn't put it here, but we know that agriculture is one of the main greenhouse gas emissions. So it's sectors. So it's 40% of 40% of greenhouse gas emissions is being produced by agriculture, and there we can add another 12%, which is the consequence of land changes in land use, which most of it is linked to deforestation, and most of this deforestation, not all of it, but most of it is linked to land use changes because of agriculture, the advance of agriculture frontier. And most of it also linked to animal feed, but I'm not going to enter on that. So implications, a lot of implications in terms of contamination, desertification, deforestation, pollution of air, water, and so on. In terms of as well social values, there is a lot of implication, because there is one knowledge only is valid, no? Scientific knowledge, peasants' knowledge is not valid anymore. It's a kind of the valorization of this type of knowledge, because it's not productive. You only look at agriculture from a productivity side of point of view. So you are only interested in producing more and more kilograms per hectare. You are not interested in other functions. So if we want to talk in terms of ecosystem services language, other services that already agriculture production already has, no? So you are only focused on one side of the, not of the coin, because coin only have two. Don't like we have many sides. So kind of just this. I will leave this presentation for you, but this I'm going to pass so you can have a look at all this, no? I have it here. This is also very important. I didn't say, natural resources deployment, linked to industrial agriculture in terms of biodiversity, animal, in terms of agrobiodiversity, the amount of native seeds and native breeds which have disappeared due to industrial agricultural production. This is really dramatic. It's a kind of I will say one of the major problems that also we have to face in the future, because it's really dramatic. Just for you to have an idea, we know that only three species, like not varieties, species, which are rice, wheat, and maize, corn. They feed 50% of the food we eat. Only 3 species. You can imagine also that from that species, in the past there were a lot of varieties which have already disappeared, because international trade, they are interested only in a few of these varieties, which of course are hybrids and developed in laboratories. They are not indigenous ones, and even if we go on further, we all have all the transgenic GMO problem, which we are not going to enter here either today, but it will be also a way that we could explain this talk today, the engagement with anti-GMO movements. Very important thing as well, the issue of inequity. Normally, industrial agricultural production, you know, you have all this technological package, which is, you know, the hybrid varieties of seeds, the pesticides, and the agrochemicals, and then the fertilizers, you know that you need to grow this high productivity variety, hybrid variety. And of course, that means that you also need to have some conditions. You know, you cannot plant this seed in the, you know, in the worst soil. You need to have access to the best soils, because otherwise this genetic potential of these seeds will not be evidentiated, will not be, you know, developed. So that means you need to go to the best soils, and we now have all this land grabbing problem, which is linked to this, but also to other political issues. But there is a really huge, big problem linked to industrial agriculture in terms of inequities in the access to land and you know, the appropriation of the best lands to produce industrial food for agricultural exports. No? And many of this agricultural production is not to feed the people. So, as I say, it's also only to feed the animals or for agrofuels, which also has an important consequences in terms of industrial production sector. No? Like, you know, there is nearly 1,000 million people is suffering from hunger, and then we have, you know, 30% of land is dedicated to animal feed, of agricultural land. It doesn't make sense. So I don't know the percentage for agrofuels, but it's also quite high. So in the end, we have not so much left for real agricultural production for direct consumption. Also, there we have to add all this which is produced for tea, for cotton, for other things which are not for people to eat themselves. Okay, so we have there also an important issue. As I have said before, all this process has already happened in a relatively short period of time, and all the consequences have already happened in a relatively short period of time, both the social consequences and both the environmental consequences. And that has allowed to generate a response from the social movements in an also relatively short period of time. No? And this is the case of La Via Campesina, that it's a social movement that it has around 200 million peasants affiliated to the movement, and it's an international movement of peasant organizations that defend, they propose and defend the concept of food sovereignty. No? And La Via Campesina is divided in, by regions, so it has in Asia, it has in Latin America, North America, Europe, and different regions. And it works completely horizontal way, right? So despite there are coordinators of each region, and normally there are two representatives, men and women, in each of these regions, but the form of the work is horizontal. So that means that the process of decision making is slow. In my opinion, it's slow, but it's more democratic. No? It's more in terms of an assembly. But when you want to do whatever thing, sometimes it's a bit slow. But it's something of the things I will say before. No? It's one of the characteristics you have, something you have to have in mind when you work, and then you need to be patient, because otherwise, you know, you get with the space. No? Well, I have put here some of these three definitions of food sovereignty. The first one is when the proposal is it was developed. No, so La Via Campesina they defined in La Habana, when this concept was already in a meeting in La Habana when this concept was developed. The food sovereignty as the right of each nation to maintain and develop its own capacity to produce its basic foods, respecting cultural and productive diversity. We have the right to produce our own food in our own territory. Food sovereignty is a precondition to genuine food security. I mean, this paragraph, there is a lot of information inside there, which we are not going also to analyze today because it's not the objective of the session, no? And we don't have so much time, so I don't think. But what is important here, I think, is that they proposed this proposal, no, this concept, of course, as a political proposal, and they, from the very beginning, they claim that food sovereignty is a political proposal and it's a clash of models. So it's the model of peasant production as a political defense of peasant production against the model of industrial production. So they always claim the clash of model. So it's not a kind of, the two of us, we have space here. It means that it's the one or the other. I mean, this is the way they present the issue, no? And when you talk to them, you understand why, no? Otherwise, and they fight for that. Otherwise, later you can agree or not or whatever, but it's like, they also like to present the topic, no? It's like the issue of the clash of models. And then this concept, when the Via Campesina already started to generate alliances with other social movements, also the concept started to change, no? Not the basic of the concept, not the message you want to send, but minor things. For instance, in 2002, they started to work with to introduce more gender topics and feminist discourse within the proposal, which before 2002 was not so clear. Or they started, you see, at the very beginning, because it was clearly a proposal against World Trade Organization. A World Trade Organization is an international organism of countries, of nations, right? They developed it as the right of each nation, because it was a political proposal against the World Trade Organization policies, right? Later, they started to introduce other views. So they say the right of peoples, the right of communities, so they expand, you know, this is not only nation, it's peoples. Here is when they started also to interact with indigenous communities and other social movements to introduce, you know, changes and these changes are important, but in the end, the basic of the class of models is what it doesn't change, okay? This is what I want to, so it's people, communities, and countries, no? To define their own agricultural, labor, fishing, food and land policies, and so on, no? Yeah, I mean, it's also very important here the issue of culture, I think in the food sovereignty issue, and there's the respect of different knowledge. And actually the issue of the respect of different knowledge, I like it very much because Peter Roset, who is a researcher in Mexico, he was working before in Food First, but now he's working in Mexico. And he has been working a lot with another concept, which I like it very much. And I think it's very, this is my own thought, but I think it's very strong concept, which is diálogo de saberes. This is the Spanish, I mean, actually, technically, the concept is called diálogo de saberes, right? Even in English, I mean, it's not translated because also the translated, I think it loses the essence, no? For those who of you who doesn't know English, Spanish, it means dialogue of knowledge, right? Of knowledge. Okay. No, it's very important. It's very important. It's just a young Andalusian, yeah, just for you to know. It's another piece of information. And in Andalusia, in Spain, we don't pronounce the S, but knowledge is okay. Important. Thank you, Christos. And I think diálogo de saberes is a very potent tool because it's now I am a way of putting but just I wanted to put this remark because I like it. Later I go back. This diálogo de saberes, which is the way, everything is about dialogue, no? But there is a dialogue without hierarchies and, about respect and so on. And it has already allowed that one of the weakest points from my point of view of all the food sovereignty discourse in practice, not in theory, in practice, it was all the agroecological issue. So at the point of putting, even for the MST, I think it's you, the one with the MST thing? Well, even for the MST, at the beginning they were defending the, industrial agriculture, because it's more productive and so on. I understand. I mean, if I was a farmer, I mean, who are you to tell me, no, don't produce with this that you produce more, and you produce with this that you produce less? No, it's a kind of, okay, I mean, why are you telling me that? Because, I really understand this, no? And Diálogo de Saberes has been actually, it was not until last year that there was a meeting of La Via Campesina from the whole machine of La Via Campesina, agreeing on agroecology, as you know, as the model they defend. No? So it was in the theory, but not in the practice. It was difficult. And this Diálogo de Saberes is a tool that has allowed to get different agreements of people who are so different. You can imagine that in La Via Campesina, we had this meeting in jail, no, of food sovereignty, and one of the main theoretical issues was, what is the peasant class? No? Because this has to be redefined now with the birth of La Via Campesina as an international actor. Because what we all have in mind as a peasant class, it has nothing to do with, so many different people who define themselves as peasants within La Via Campesina, which is very heterogeneous. But you have industrial farmers there, people who are farmers from Europe, farmers from the United States, and then you have, farmers from the Altiplano of Bolivia, that they are what you probably understand as peasants. But also the farmers from the United States and the farmers from Europe, they claim themselves as peasants, right? So, and this kind of, since the birth of La Via Campesina, all this Diálogo de Saberes has been a key issue, which is interesting because this is another theoretical thing that I'm going to do, because I like it very much, but we have no time, I'm sorry. But yes, it's a key tool, and I like it because it's a tool that it has not born, no, it's not born from capitalism, no? This tool is born from the movement. And I think, this is of course my thought, that if we want to change the society, we want to change the system, we need to use tools which are not born from the system. Because if we use the tools which are born from the system, then it happens what always happens, that the system absorbs alternatives, and then the alternatives pass from oppositional to progressive.
Like internet, for example.
Yeah, for instance.
We shouldn't use.
No, you can use the tools depending on what you want to use for them. But for instance, I'm going to show you a different example for agriculture and food. When you use labeling of certification of products, no, organic agriculture, for instance, no, or whatever labeling. Labeling is a tool which has been born from the capitalist system, and as a tool of standardization and so on. In the end, what happened at the beginning? Very nice, no, because it allows to expand the alternatives that you want to create or that you have created. With the time, what you get is that this alternative has been being embedded by the system, and it's not a real alternative anymore, right? So, but again, this is away from today's talk. This we can expand another day, but in my opinion, if we want to really transform the system and change the system, we need to develop and create tools which are not born from the capitalist system. Right? And I just put examples of this is very easy to say, very difficult to do, but yeah. So food sovereignty have 5 pillars. Actually, it was Mikel and I that in terms of working with food sovereignty decided to use these 5 pillars. And actually, we have another one, which is gender, because they have been working quite often now, quite strong now with the feminist movement, Marcha Mundial de las Mujeres, the Women's World March, and so on. But it's access to resources, the production system, all these pillars of agroecology and so on. Transformation, commercialization, consumption, social organization, and agricultural policies. No? And the social organization is very, very, very important because it's the pillar that it deals with all the alliances issue that for La Via Campesina is a key. It's a key topic. So you cannot really create this alternative to capitalism if there are not alliances among anti-capitalist social movements, right? and La Via Campesina, they define themselves as anti-capitalist movement. Okay, so alliances is very important. Okay, this I'm going to pass very fast because I don't think we have a lot of time. So this is the context of agriculture, La Via Campesina, and food sovereignty, where it comes from, and what do they claim for, and and then here we are, the researchers. What do we do? No? And then as researchers, we are researchers that work in agriculture and food systems. And actually, most of the Marxist researchers of rural sociology, they work within a concept which is the agri-food sociology, right? Which is it's a different, and we are all a group in the RC40 of the ISA, all the time. But it's so the food sociology researchers, we are embedded in all this, this system where different actors, institutions, in agri-food system. You have all the assessment part, where we are, all the knowledge and so on, all the management, with the policymakers and all the institutions, the legislation and so on, and of course the agricultural practices with the farmers, and then we are embedding, all these things is kind of complex net where we all have our different roles. And scientists, we can decide what we want to do with this. Sometimes for other people it's not so easy to say we can. You can if you have the knowledge, no? The first thing you have to be is this critical thinking, no? Because you are a scientist, but without critical thinking, then you cannot decide what you want to do. You are in the global trend, the main trend that leads you like a stream, of a river towards the direction of the river, but you cannot jump to another direction if you don't know there is another direction. This is why I said before that the first thing is to be critical thinker, right? In terms of in your life, I would say. But of course, if you want to do research, this kind of research is like the first thing. Otherwise, you cannot. It's not that you want not. You want not, no me lo he inventado, I have invented. You don't want, but it means that you cannot, no? Because you have no, you can do. And yeah, so and of course, when you do this thinking, you also know that science is a source of power. No, this is something that we all know. And it's a kind of an ethical and moral issue that you have to consider yourself. It's not, like, okay, I know you are in a institution that is a university, that whether you like it or not, it has power in our society. It has, we live in this science evidence-based society, where policymakers want all the, they want to claim that what they do is evidence-based. Other thing is what they do, but they claim that what they do is evidence-based, and that means that scientists' role is to provide of rigorous and analysis of reality to be able to provide these evidences to scientists, who are the ones who have to do the decisions. No, this is how it works. So there, once you also have this piece of information, there is also an ethical issue, no, for you as a researcher, because then you say, okay, you have kind, to decide, okay, what I'm going to work with, no, and for. So, and actually, in the context of agriculture, it's also very clear, no. It means that. We have this industrial agriculture I have told you before, and I would say like 95% of researchers in agriculture work for this type of industrial agriculture. Many of them because they like or they want, many of them because they don't know there is another type of agriculture, and actually is what De Sousa Santos called the sociology of absence and the sociology of emergence, no? But it's like this, no? And you can decide once, as I said, no? You are a critical researcher and you know of this, different realities for which type of agriculture you want to you want to go for peasant agriculture or you want to go for industrial agriculture. Right? This is a kind of a dichotomy here that you have to, in terms of, but also to work for peasant agriculture or for you know, agroecology and different type of agriculture, even when you have the knowledge, no, or you have a critical thinking, and you know there is this alternative, sometimes it's also difficult because the mainstream of the institution that provide the money for the research and so on are focused on the contrary to what you are doing. So in missing industrial agriculture. And here I just put some numbers that, for instance, in Spain, the research and development policy, it provides 60 times more money to industrial agriculture than it does to organic agriculture, which organic agriculture doesn't mean peasant agriculture, right? So just to have it clear that even for peasant agriculture would be much bigger, but there are no numbers for that, no? Okay? In the United States, for instance, you only have 0.1% of the land in experimental farms dedicated to organic agriculture. So that means that 99.9% of the land is dedicated to industrial agriculture. I mean, so even when you are a critical researcher and you want to, I can't see very well, but they are very enthusiastic. Even if you are a critical researcher, no, enthusiastic, you know, with peasant agriculture and so on, even you have the, how do you call it, the institutional barriers that can help you to develop your research, no? Which in a way is the money from the public institutions, right? So another thing there, no? And it's very sad because in fact what we have in the issue of agriculture is that you know, 70% of the food is not produced by industrial agriculture. 70% of the food worldwide is produced by peasant agriculture. But most of the research is going to industrial agriculture. No? So we are not doing science for majorities. We are in fact doing science for minority. No? So, but this is a classic anyway. So this is what I say, no, here, that the food is made by the peasants worldwide. Because sometimes the people that we live in this part of the world, we have the perspective, of course, of our, you know, European context and so on, that most of the agriculture we see, it's industrial agriculture. But we expand the view, most of the agriculture in the world is not industrial agriculture, right? It's peasant agriculture. And it's the food that is feeding the world. It's not industrial agriculture that is feeding the world, it's peasant agriculture that is feeding the world. Otherwise, the science is going to another different direction, to industrial agriculture, of course, because it's used as a tool by the system to promote industrial agriculture worldwide. So it's a tool, you know, that is used by the capitalist system. So so they do the research for agri-food corporations, but not my people. No, this is what I was saying about before, the sociology of answers and sociology of emergencies. No. So, so here we are, no? Then you want to do these alliances, and then you have, despite all these problems you have, no? Because there are many problems when you want to be in this type of research, very minority, marginal research. But then also you have practical problems when you are working with actors. At least with actors with La Via Campesina. Different is when you are working for food sovereignty with other different actors, like NGOs and so on, which have different structure, they have different way of organizing themselves and so on. Everything is more, probably more, it's more pragmatic in a way, no? Like, you know, very fast. But, and then you are working also with some social movements, right? NGOs or other actors, which is not La Via Campesina. I'm going to talk today about the La Via Campesina case. And it has a different way to organize yourself, no? When you are working with these actors. But La Via Campesina is a different thing, no? Before I go that, when you go when you are thinking on this science with people and so on, no? You can decide yourself whether you want or you can be an activist. I mean, this is not compulsory. No? For me, it's a plus. For me, this is my thought. No? And actually, Christos and I, we have talked sometimes about this topic, no? That to me it's difficult to do a critical assessment of the reality, to be politically engaged and search social transformation, but do it with a really, without being an activist, no? Yourself, no? To me, it's difficult, but I understand people, sometimes people cannot. Actually, me, myself, in this moment of my life, I cannot, because I have 2 children which are very small, and now it's impossible for me to follow social movements schedules, right? The reasons, because really I cannot. Otherwise, I have to forget about my work, and that's it, no? It's really, so sometimes it's not that you cannot, you are not, okay, you don't want, but it's that you cannot, no? But it's, or sometimes even because you, I mean, also actually to be an activist, you also have to have your chip change, you know? It's a kind of a, it's like when you, in the agri-food issue, I know I can have the knowledge of many different of many of the things that already happened with agriculture and food, but I can still be buying myself in a supermarket. No, that would be, from my point of view, a contradiction, but it happens already because in order to be able to buy in a consumer cooperative or different type, you also have to change your habits. With the other chip, you have to change. No? It's like, okay, I know, but I have difficulty to engage because I have to change my habits. No? And sometimes the system is so strong that to change your habits is really difficult. So with the other thing is also the same. I mean, that probably also to be an activist, you have to change your habits. And you know, the machine system of, you know, of your work, meetings and so on, it makes it difficult also to a lot of people to be really engaged as an activist. Okay, but I think this is a plus, no? It doesn't mean to be better or worse. For me, anything of this is really good. It's the best. It doesn't mean that you are not an activist. It doesn't mean you are not good. This means you just simply a different reality, and that's it. Okay, just to clarify, because this is also important. But it is a plus because being an activist gives you or provides you of trust with the movement. And at least in the issue with La Via Campesina and food sovereignty things, trust is key. So, and unless you are like the key figure of, you know, food sovereignty from a theoretical perspective and so on, that then social movement called you because you are a key figure, the rest of the people like me, or you know them, and they call you because they trust you, and then you have nothing to do really with them, to work, you know, actively with the movement, because the movement is based on trust. All the alliance, in a way, to work with La Via Campesina as a researcher is another form of alliance, you know. As I said before, in the social organization part of food sovereignty, the alliance topic is a key, is a pillar, no? So food sovereignty has been developed through from the beginning in 1996 to what it is now, through alliance with different movements. And research is just simply another alliance. So that means they have to be based on trust, because alliances are based on trust. They are not based on, you know, it depends on different alliances. You can have like utilitarian alliance, right? Okay, and then you have political and more strategic alliances, okay? I'm talking about strategic alliances. Utilitarian alliance means, for instance, to engage all together to prepare, you know, ¿cómo se dice? Una manifestación, you know, to prepare something. This is an utilitarian alliance that you maybe do something with people that you probably are not politically 100% engaged, but you are fighting for one specific thing in one specific moment that makes possible to have this alliance that time. Strategic alliances are politically based, and this is a different topic. Okay, so this is why I think, at least in the issue of La Via Campesina and the issue of food sovereignty, to be an activist, this is a plus because of the trust. No? This is very, very important. And actually, because in the agri-food fight, we call it, it's very easy as well to fall down fall down, into the discussion of strategies. No? Agroecology, it has 3 pillars, no? Or 3 dimensions. And 2 of the dimensions are related to culture, politics, and so on. And 1 dimension is related to technical productivity things. But it's very easy to dismantle of this political part and just go to the strategies. No? For climate change, okay, we can use this and this and this. Local traditional knowledge, of course, it's the same. So you can just dismantle all this political side of local traditional knowledge and just keep the technical part, no? The practices and so on. But practices without policy, so without politics, it's changed out of the picture, right? So it's very, very, very important, because then you can get lost. If you have not this activist perspective of where you want to go at the end with the people, then you can maybe get lost in the middle of the way, just looking at the practices, but not looking at this political change in the agri-food case. It's very easy. The other thing that is important I think it's interesting, and why it is a plus to be an activist, is because it allows you to be closer to the reality, and that means to be closer to their needs and do research which is useful for them. And when you do research, it's very easy to do the research. Easy, I know it's not easy, no? I have to tell you, but to do what you like. And probably what you like, or what I like the most personally in food sovereignty, I like it everything. This is why I do a lot of things and nothing of something, no? So it's a kind of well, this woman is a bit of crazy, no? But it's very easy that you do what the research that you like, but then it's not useful for the movement. It's not what they need in that specific moment. So if you are not an activist in this field, if you have not the trust built with the movement, it's very difficult to know what they need in this moment, no? So when you have, oh, I need to do that, and I have brought here, for instance, this work we did with Via Campesina about public policies for food sovereignty, no? So they had this meeting. I can leave it here so you can already pass. I have brought some examples, no, of things that so you can say, okay, this is what I'm going to explain this case, no? Was this public policies, no? That they had this meeting, international meeting of Via Campesina about public policies for food sovereignty. So they call us, no? Me and Fernando and so on. We have some money from the Basque country government. If you can help us to give us a picture of how is the thing, so that later we can discuss. Probably this was not, I like it because I like all these things, but probably it was not what you had in mind to do the research. But it's what they need in that moment, no? So it's also a kind of balance that you have to find there as well, no? And it's only you have it if you have built this trust through activism and engagement, active engagement with them, no? I think it's important when you are a scientist, you can have also very different roles when you are engaged with these movements. Of course, you have, and we are lucky that we are paid to think. So I think this is really a privilege. No, it's not something that, you know, it's a kind of wow. No, it's like it's something that you will do for free, and then even you are paid for this. It's a kind of why. No? So you can help in many different things. No, so you can help in developing methodologies. You can help in, of course, in looking at comparisons of different results. No, integrating, looking at the interaction, things that they don't have time to do, but you have time to do. All right. And this provides also new reality, new ways to look at the reality, and it's the way we get results, different results, no? So as a scientist, it's very useful as well, no? It also helps, as a scientist, we can provide things like linking food sovereignty in terms of theoretical thinking with other alternatives to social theories that provide alternatives to capitalism, like with the growth. Okay, so the linkages between food sovereignty and the growth are quite strong, or the linkages between the newest linkages that they are developing now between feasibility and feminist studies, particularly with ecofeminism, right? So these are things that we as researchers have time also to develop, and provides of a theoretical corpus, which is also important, because in the case of food sovereignty, it's not something that it's a theoretical. It's not a theory that was there and they used, but it was something that was built from below, which makes it interesting. But if you want also to build a policy alternative, then it has to have a theoretical corpus. It's not something that you just can build with the practice, at least in our society nowadays. This is how I see it. And the other important thing that you can do when you do all these things is that you also provide information in the society we have today for international panels, no? Like the IISTD, I don't know if you know, International Assessment for Agricultural Science and Technology for Development, which is a United Nations panel, of the IPCC, no? The Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. That what they do is to look at, you know, at the what is in the academia has been published. If there is not people from the academia working on this sociology of absence, no? Of these people who are the majority, but they are not studied, that means that, you know, all these international panels, they will still continue, you know, contributing to this invisibilization. No? So it's a kind of we as researchers that work with this, we also help to put this in a different, you know, level. Things you have to have in mind. You have to be patient. The reasons are completely different. You can imagine, for instance, the reasons of natural science are different to the reasons of social science. The reasons of social science, the reasons of research are completely different to the reasons of the social movements, and particularly in the case of La Via Campesina. As I have said, they are an horizontal movement. So they have to take decisions. That means they have to pass through all the regions, and so everything is very delayed. In this case, for instance, I have shown you know of this public policy case. It was a kind of a nightmare. So and now I'm going to contradict myself, which is also nice. So no, that means that I have said that you are doing the policy they need. In this specific work, this was the beginning. At the end, we had to do the policy, the research we could do, because we had meetings there. They were meeting with us, and in the end, they had to go back to the regions and say, okay, how we are going to work in order to provide information, and how we are going to organize ourselves within the regions in order to see how they are this public policy. And so and then we have the deadline of the meeting they had, no? It's like, okay, there's no way we are going to be able to do this by the meeting unless we do our own research in terms of a review of policy. It was much more difficult to if they had already engaged more actively without this. So we had to do a research of constitutions and policies and so. And we had a 1,000-page document, which of course is unreadable, mostly for social movements. And we had to finally come up with this thing, which is, personally I'm not happy with the result, because I don't think it was really what they wanted. But it was the problem of how to function with this kind of, you know, big machines, okay? This is the case, as I say, of La Via Campesina, because it's very big. If you are working with smaller social movements or NGO, everything is much more fluid. But with horizontal movement, international horizontal movements, it's very difficult, right? And this is, as I say, now I contradict myself in the way that, in the end, this research, for instance, we present it in our congresses and so on, because this is the other side of, and here, yes, it's the other side of the coin. That when you do this, you do research as an activist, there is another problem. First, I have said you have to be patient. The other one is that we are also within policy, public institutions that require of results. And the way you are measuring your results is through publications in academia, in academic journals, peer review, and so on. And this takes time, because if you do this type of publications, which normally also they go with no names, that you are not providing the quality that you are going to be measured. So that means that you have to do double workload. You have double workload. You have to work for your work. That means writing academic journals and and all this stuff, which is the one for which you are evaluated. But then you are engaged with the social movement, and you cannot say, okay, I have published this. Here you have it. So okay, come on, I cannot read 1,000 pages document, but I cannot read either, this document in English and, with academic vocabulary. So that means that you have to engage as well in writing in different language, right? A language which is more popular, let's say, no? So you have double workload. No? But in a way, it's also a form to be activist if you want to. This is a way because you are also providing your time. Activist doesn't mean that you have to be all the time, in all the demonstrations. It also means that you can be activist in a different way. And we could say probably this is another form of being activist with the movement. Try to dedicate your time, put your time in presenting the science, the academic findings, in a different, with a different conceptualization and with a different form, right? Well, I have other things here with examples and so on, but if we want maybe to engage in a discussion or, because I'm talking too much.
Comments, questions?
Sharing experiences of...
We'll have 2 now, 3, and then we will...
Yes.
I have a very quick question.
Can you introduce yourself also, because everyone know me, and I don't expect to know all of you now, but at least these people who are talking.
Yes, I'm Stefania Bacca, and I'm an environmental historian by training, by profession, but I also do political ecology. And I work in Coimbra at the Center for Social Studies, where Boaventura Sousa Santos is based. So I like very much the way you applied the idea of the sociology of absence to your case. I think it's very appropriate. I had a very short question. How do you define peasant agriculture? Because I was struck by what you said, that 70%, if I'm correct, of the food production comes from peasant agriculture. I was convinced that it was the opposite. So can you give me, a definition? What is peasant agriculture?
Is it right if we take some on?
Okay, probably we can take some of them. Yeah, I think it's better, no? Yes. I don't know what time is it. Okay, so we are perfect. So another question?
If she doesn't remember the question, just leave it.
Yes, of course.
I have 3 questions. Well, my name is Irmak. I'm working.
Come on, Irmak. You're the only person I know.
I'm working on aquaculture, and I'm also working in a cooperative as an activist in Turkey. So your presentation was very nice, and that's why I have several questions.
You don't need to say all the time this. You just.
First of all, how do you see the role and potential of cooperatives and the networks of solidarity economy in the movement of food sovereignty movement, and how close they really can work?
Yeah, because I wasn't going to forget now. You are starting to have, and I think it's interesting things. Yeah.
And how close they can work with the Via Campesina, like two sides of the coin, let's say, again, production sites, production cooperatives, peasants, small-scale agriculture, and consumption cooperatives, let's say. That's the first question. The second one, I'm just wondering, what would you comment on the relation of La Via Campesina with fisher people? How is it really close again? I mean, I know that they are part of it to some extent, but like the word form of fisher peoples and so on, small scale fishermen, fisher people, to what extent they are in the movement. The third one is about the participatory guarantee mechanisms, like as a response to organic certification mechanism and as a response to the adoption of it by capitalism. I guess it came out also from Latin America. Peasants created a network of participatory, they first called it participatory certification system, then they changed it to participatory guarantee mechanism, as far as I know. So do you think, would you comment whether it's a good alternative, or would you see it also like weak because it imitates the organic, like labeling, which is given the capitalism, as you said, as you mentioned?
Probably we can take one more and that's it, because...
Well, I don't know if I have specific questions. So my name is Irina. I did research on anti-mining movements in Romania, where I come from. Now I'm in Coimbra working with Stefania. I have sort of like two comments, perhaps more reflexive that we can talk about it, but just I want to put it out there because I'm curious if you have a reaction to it. So first, I really liked the fact that you pointed out that trust is very important in alliances and in building. I'm trying to write about trust and ethics in movement, and I'm curious how do you think about this issue? Because I mean, just writing about ethics, like you said, you know, in the production of knowledge, admitting that you have not just an ethical, like methodological kind of accuracy, but you have a political position as well, is very controversial, no? So how do you think about trust and ethics in this kind of production of knowledge in science through movements? And the second question, I want to challenge a little bit, because I really like the fact that you said, okay, we don't want to use instruments that are produced by the system. But I want to ask you, whenever we demand for rights, the discourse of rights is not still a product of modernist states. How do we get out of it? Because for me, it's still a deadlock, and from what I've seen from the movement, it's still not enough in that sense.
Interesting. I will give the answer I can give because I am, as I give you my. But I think all of your questions are very, very interesting. Some are more reflexive, as you say, others are more practical. So, the peasant definition. The peasant definition is broad definition, even for the Via Campesina, right? So that means, for instance, it's not only those who produce through in agriculture. So that means that you have the pastoralists, you have the fishermen, and you have indigenous people. They included like peasant, that it doesn't have to be indigenous people, and collectors. So people in the forest that collect the food for self-consumption. All this is included in the concept of peasant that La Via Campesina has already. So they are like the movement for food sovereignty, and they say we are the people who produce the food worldwide. They are including all of this. But although most of them are people who produce food through agriculture, right? Which is the majority of all this movement, right? To me, but this is an issue of discussion. Peasant is and this is going probably to Chajanov studies, no? One of the main characteristics is that your objective is the reproduction of the system, right? So you want to produce, but you want your system to be sustainable enough as to be reproduced as well. Because, for instance, in aquaculture, you have 6 years of over-extraction, and 5-6 years, the system is finished. You cannot define yourself as peasant because your main objective is the accumulation of capital. So it's capitalist agriculture. Peasant agriculture, main objective is the reproduction of the system. Of course, to be able to earn a life, no? to make a life and to have a livelihood from this, but to be able to reproduce the system. And this number, they was given by the ETC, what's the siglas of ETC? You know, you just do the search and I can also provide you the. So that means that you can include in that way peasant farmers here.
I didn't understand. Who gave this number?
ETC group.
It's etcgroup.org.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, what is it?
What do they do?
It came from basically biotechnology issues in relation with farming, and then they have evolved, and now it's broader, like a broader approach to many all sorts of food-related technology issues.
And it's
they're like a reference for many groups.
And they do research which is not academic in a way. You know, there are also NGOs who do research like GRAIN, like ETC, and others, like FIAM, for instance, that in food sovereignty. And they are not academic, but they do also the Transnational Institute. They also do research. You know, they are not academic; they are linked. But so I think in this definition, which is actually an old definition, allow you also to put in the equation farmers from the north, who are family farmers. Yes.
So there are capital letters of erosion, technology, and concentration.
So I didn't know that too, you know. For me, the ETC group, no, they have it. So this is how I will define it. This is how I will define it. Probably is not how. This is why I'm going to refer you to this paper, because they are the one who gave that number, and I think it's important that you have a look, right? Because now I don't remember exactly the paper. The paper was 2011, I think it was this paper, and I think it's important for you to have a look at it. And if you want, we can also discuss later on, because you will have my email address, okay?
Yeah, just one clarification. So you mean, so wage laborers who work for capitalist agriculture are peasant agriculture part or not? They're not, right?
They are part of la Via Campesina.
But it's not confusing. They are not farmers.
It's
they are
not,
workers.
but it's
Exactly,
confusing.
they are workers, they're not farmers.
Yeah,
So they don't
but
have
for la Via
control.
Campesina, they are I don't
They
think.
have any control on
Yeah, but I don't think for this study.
Commodity producers and wage laborers.
I don't think they use it for this study, because this food is produced from industrial farming and comes from agriculture, capitalized agriculture, right? Although that doesn't mean that these people, as workers, they defend a different food system, they defend their rights, and they are part of la Via Campesina. And here in Spain, we have the SOC movement, which is el Sindicato de Obreros del Campo. So this, you understand in Portuguese, no? Sindicato de Obreros del Campo. They are jornaleros, so it's the work movement, and they are part of la Via Campesina. But for this specific case you are asking me, I don't think the work from these people was part of the number, okay? Because the food which is produced from these people comes from industrial system, okay? The cooperatives of peasants. Cooperatives, we actually had this thing I show you here. This is a magazine that you can find in internet, and it's a magazine which is called Food Sovereignty, Biodiversity and Cultures. And we have created here in Spain with people from university, people from la Via Campesina in Spain, people from NGOs, people that defend food sovereignty. And actually we discussed specific topics as related to food sovereignty, and we want to problematize. So we problematize about these topics. One of the topics we problematized was about cooperatives. And this is the typical example of what I was saying before, cooptation by the system, no? You have to be, at least in the north part of the global north, a lot of care with it, because nowadays cooperatives of farmers are like capitalist enterprise. So from a food sovereignty perspective, the only way that cooperatives can provide an alternative is when they are inserted within the social solidarity economy. Economía social y solidaria, social and solidarity economy, which have different premises to capitalist economy, of course. So, but when you are a cooperative that your main aim is to earn money and you have no other criteria, and to increase your rate of return from what you are producing, then you are a capitalist cooperative, and this is not part of the food sovereignty debate. Okay, it's part of the problem actually, because what they have been doing in the case of food is demobilizing farmers.
It's the case of Mondragon with the,
For instance.
with
What?
Veroski.
Yeah, Mondragon.
Mondragon.
Consume,
Mondragon.
Mondragon.
Mondragon Group was for many years the main, let's say, example in industrial terms of how a cooperative could be built in a regional area with many different branches or aspects, and now it has been shown to be
A monster.
more or less the same status of thing that basically all the rest of the structures. And this is why that's how I see it.
Yeah. So unless you don't change the framework and from which you are working from, that means that you are not an alternative. This is the case at least of cooperatives. Our thoughts on it, no? The relation of La Via Campesina with Fisher, as far as I know, probably no, that is not like this. There are two global movements of fisheries, and one has a lot of good relations, and the other one not so good. But when they talk about food sovereignty, La Via Campesina, and so on, they always include the small-scale fisher people. Okay, so I will say in general terms, relation is good. There is, when we talk about this issue of the alliances, the food sovereignty created a figure, which is the IPC, the International Committee for Food Sovereignty. Can you share the IPC? Sometimes it's a problem of acronyms, that you know at the beginning, but then you use it so much that you forget more or less what's the origin. But and the IPC basically was a kind of networking of different organizations working for from a food sovereignty perspective and fighting for food sovereignty. You know, women's groups, fishermen, pastoralists, indigenous groups, and so on. And it was a kind of this group which has a structure, and you know, so by regions and by topics. They had a direct dialogue with FAO. So it was an instrument for dialogue with the FAO, right?
International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty.
International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty, right? And the IPC, they also had the fisher, the movement of fishery was international movement for fishery was it was within the IPCC and with very good relations with La Via Campesina and so on. The participatory warranty mechanism potential for me is high because it really has been built from below, one thing, but second because the premises to access to a certification thing, let's say, it's completely different to the premises of a normal certification, right? So your objective is, first, the principles are discussed between all the actors. What do you want? And what you have here probably is completely different to what you have 20 kilometers away. So then you have not one standardization system, static, which is valid for all, you know, for a whole country or a whole region or the whole world, like, you know, the flow system of fair trade. But it means that you have you know, some premises that a group of people agree. They can be revised anytime. If people new enter into the group, they can say, I don't agree with this, I would like to revise these principles. It's completely different. So I would say for me it's more based on that diálogo de saberes than it is based on the principles of capitalist certification, right? So it's based on no hierarchies, look for the common goods and things like this. The truth and ethics in the production of knowledge with movement, no? Then the question was, because we are long, what is for me the importance of truth? So what's the potentiality?
Trust. You were talking about trust and
Well,
ethics.
trust. Yes?
You can develop a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe with a story or something.
With the story?
What makes you think that it's trust and ethics?
So I'm going to first do the rights because I think the trust is going to be a bit longer. The right thing, I totally agree with you, actually. And there is a lot of debate. Even for because the food sovereignty proposal was developed with a rights base, and actually they still build the right of peasants, like the new letter for the rights of peasants, and they developed the proposal from the, as a policy, as a political proposal to achieve the right to food, and so on. And here there is a lot of discussion. Here, for instance, we have this example, at least in the Via Campesina debate, of an utilitarian strategy, as I said. Okay, we know in our society the discourse of rights is potent, it's strong, and we are going to use it. And mostly, actually, that they include even because we have the community rights, but normally when people talk about rights, they talk about individual rights. No? So it's when you think in the general thinking of people, when you think about rights, you are thinking about individual rights, which goes, and it is normal because they were developed in a context of capitalism, where individualism is very important, And actually, you have here in most countries that private property, which is an individual right, is over common rights, right? That are also accepted by the United Nations, no? So individual rights is like, And so there is a contradiction here. But to my knowledge, probably I am not, probably it's what I think and probably it's not right. But to my knowledge, there is a contradiction which is known. You know what I mean? It's not a contradiction to say, so it's a kind of this utilitarian use of rights in order to achieve what you want to achieve. Whether this is a good strategy or not, this is another matter of discussion, because then we are talking about what I was saying before, that if we are using, the tools developed by the system, I'm not so sure that we can really change the system, no? And then you will have the risk that you fall down into this, into the middle way, and you don't achieve your final objective. But specifically, this issue, I think, is a noun. It's a noun and a contradiction, right? And about the issue of trust and ethics, how I did get to here, no? It was from my own experience. And actually, I live it like this myself, no? When, as I have said, no, we are developing this agroecology chair, and the, ¿cómo se dice decano? Dean, no, the dean, no, the vice-rector? Vice-rector of our university, who doesn't know anything about food sovereignty, but I talked quite a lot with him. He liked it. He doesn't know what it is, but he liked it, no? And, he's very active and so on. So we are trying to develop this master of alternative agri-food systems and so. And why don't you talk with these people? I said, okay. His name is Jordi. Okay, Jordi. We are not so many people working on food sovereignty. We know who we are. So I don't say these people are not good. I know probably they are very good, researchers and very good people and so on. I cannot introduce these people in the, in the process. It's impossible because this can put the process in peril. The process, as we are going to develop it, is from bottom-up thing. No, you can develop a master, for instance. I'm trying to explain with a practical base. Right? We are going to develop this master, and this master, for me, is very easy. You have the theoretical knowledge. What are the important things from an academia point of view and academic point of view, which have to be in an alternative agri-food systems master. Put it a draft to to the university, and you just pass the process and so on. If you want to do it well in this kind of things, you have to go to the movements, to the people below. Not only movement, but people who is doing agroecology and who is doing in the practice creating alternative agri-food movements, and present the proposal to see what they think, what do you think there is something missing, and so on. This is not something you do in 1 year, this is something that requires more time, no? And now imagine we are doing this, and you put in the middle, and this is not even trust among between you and a movement. It's trust within the academia in that issue as fragile as, you know, in an issue like this, no? For somebody, cannot do that. I mean, even if they are very nice, even if they are, you know, people who are critics, which I don't know because I never heard about them. It's not possible because it can, something like this, it can already break the process, right? And with the movement, it's exactly the same. You know, it's a very, because it's a very anti-capitalist and very political spirit, which, of course, this is my personal experience, no? But
So it requires long-term face-to-face interaction in everyday life.
Yes.
This is what you're saying.
Yeah, perfect. You could do it. You could say it from here. It's exactly. I mean, I've been engaged in the social movement for food sovereignty since 2005, 2004, more or less, and actually it's because of the fall of them that I've been a, how you say, precarious person almost all my life until last year. Because in the past I was, you know, natural scientist and so on, you know, and you have a lot of money and very easy to get. You do this, very. It was, but then it's a kind of, you know, that you decide, and these things you talk with the people and they see you are here, you are there, you ask for nothing. This is something very important as well. This is I didn't mention. I think it's very important, and it's also a very typical mistake of NGOs. Also of academics. They have money, they give it to Via Campesina to do, I have this money and we can do this with these people and this, I say, okay, no. If you want to help, you can give us the money and then we decide it, how we use it, probably in this topic because it has been given by, to be used by that topic. But if you put as the premises of how and to who, for what and to who we have to call and in which way we have to use it, then it's a kind of, okay, it's something we have to build collectively. It's not something that has to be imposed, right? It's not the way of working with them, right? Which doesn't mean that you don't have your, this is diálogo de saberes, everyone has a talk, has a say, right? It doesn't mean that you cannot say your say as well, okay? But, and after years working with them without really asking, you know, I don't know, be famous or, you know, whatever, you can say, I don't know. Then people also trust what you are doing, no? Because they know you are doing because you believe on this. It's very easy to see when people is doing something that they believe on this, or they just doing because accidentally they fall there, and which is nothing wrong on that, with that. It's only that I think in this topic specifically, trust is very important because it gives you this plus I have told you before. But you cannot have it, and you can work from a theoretical perspective, you can be a critical researcher, you can be many things which are very valid, very important, and very necessary. We are talking with the social, working codo con codo, you know, face to face with the social movements, where trust is very important.
Marta, I think we are running out of time. The information that you have asked, the report, it was called Who Will Feed Us? And it was produced in 2009, now I remember. It takes a little bit of time. Now, and there was a second version in 2012, which is the one that you mentioned. The way of getting the information, it was, on one hand, they do like a stakeholder meetings on those sort of approach. And also, I remember that they have an information another way around, which was, they looked to the reports of which part of the food is produced without chemical industry inputs. This is something very important for them in terms of marketing. So there were good studies on how much food is still produced without our report. And then this figure was around 40% of the food is produced without chemical production. So they say, okay, then it's quite safe to say 60% is produced in this, let's say, organic way. But this is a figure which is in fact a lower level, because much of the production which is linked with Via Campesina is produced also with some sort of chemical
Yes.
inputs. So it's clearly like a very low estimation. So it will be higher. And this is
It's an estimation.
so, thanks, Marta. I think disclose now, but still, if you have any sort of doubts,
Yes, you can write me or whatever. Eh?
contact me.
Will be also a minimal thing, no? Because you're critical with everything that surrounds you, even with the alternatives. No? I mean, being a critical researcher means to be critical all the time. So, of course, critical with main trends of capitalism and so on, because, of course, it's one of the main problems we have already now. But also critical when we are working with food sovereignty and so on. We also need to be critical with food sovereignty. We need to problematize all the time, because it's the way the knowledge also advances, no? Because otherwise we are static and there's no dynamism in what we do, no? And this is common not only for researchers, but I think also for people who work in social movement, that they also tend to problematize quite often, no? The second thing which I think is important is that you are politically engaged. Politically engaged, we all know also what it means. It doesn't mean that you have to be in a political party. It means that you are engaged with policy issues in general where you live. It can be at different levels, international level, local level, whatever. No? But it also means that you are, you have this. Yeah, I mean this. The need. Once you are critical, you have like a need to politically engage, because in a way, what do you want to be critical for if then you like do nothing, no? So it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a kind of follow-up thing, like very fluid. It goes like this, no? And of course, you also are politically engaged because you want to transform the society in which you live in. No? In the society where we live, it's not. I mean, it has a lot of mancances. Yeah, deficits. So you look for social transformation. What is not so common, I will say that most of the people that work with the idea of science with people have at least these three characteristics. I will say this is quite common in people that we believe in this concept. What is not so common, or it's not like 100% or people that work with this, is the engagement, unfortunately, with the social movements, right? So, because probably it's the most difficult part, and I will tell you later why it's so difficult, at least in my experience with Via Campesina, because of course, different movements have different characteristics, and the case of Via Campesina really is a kind of a monster, of big machine, very difficult to move with their own, dynamics, and engage with this monster in a positive way, of course. It's from an academic point of view, it's a kind of tiring as well, no? It's exciting on the one side, but it's also tiring on the other side, no? So, but yes, we can find many important people and many researchers who are, politically engaged in a way, and they're critical theories and look for social transformation, but then they are not engaged with the roots, social movements from the roots, no? The problem with this, in my opinion, is that, well, I will tell you later of this, no? So more or less, this is what we are going to talk about today. And what I'm going to do now is to contextualize the 3 points for the agricultural case, no? Agricultural and food, which is where I work, and Via Campesina, and food sovereignty, no? Of course, why we are critical researchers? Because we analyze the context, the context of capitalism. We solve all the policies derived from capitalism, and privatization, free trade, deregulation, the minimal participation of state, individualism. All these characteristics of neoliberal capitalism that we know it has some impacts that we don't like, no? So, and all these characteristics which I have put in here are very clear how they are landed into agriculture. No? In agriculture, I like it very much, the issue of agriculture, because it's very visual. No? In a way, it has been the latest sector, we could say, will be the latest sector that has been incorporated, in this accumulation process of capitalism, like one of the latest sectors to be incorporated in the process, and everything has been very fast. No? So all the Yes, I work in the University of Vic, Central University of Catalonia, which is about 70 kilometers from here, and it's located in a rural area, which I think is a good thing for a university actually. And I think probably the most important thing I can tell you now is that we are developing a new chair on agroecology and food systems for social transformation, which I am very optimistic it will be a nice point of meeting point for people here in Catalonia, of course in the world, but mainly we want to start the networking with Catalonia because we are a bit like bullets, like a champignon, right? And we want to first create this critical mass of people working on food sovereignty from the academia, right? So we are on this now, but of course all of us, we have international connection and so on, but first we need this critical mass here to be more strong, no? Hello. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to present you first context of what is la Via Campesina for those of you who don't know what it is, food sovereignty and so on, the role of science and all this. And later, and this will be a bit with the PowerPoint and so on, and later I will present some personal experience from which I have taken some notes actually that I'm going to take before I forget. And there I think we can share things and yeah, I mean, of course you can interrupt me anytime, eh? So if you want to say whatever, you can tell me in any moment of this presentation. The truth is that we don't have so much time, no? So 1 hour and a half, and we start 10 minutes late. It's not so much time, but I think it's okay, no? I think the first thing is, I think all people we agree here with the concept of science for people that was developed with, by Fonkowitz, and you know, this is like minimal point of departure, no? Because otherwise, I don't know what we are doing here. No? So this is minimal point of departure. But of course, when you are looking at that means that at least you have several characteristics, no? First, you are a critical researcher, so that impacts everything that we analyze that has already happened in other sectors. In agriculture, has been very fast, no? The same things, but it has been very fast in very few years, and also the alternatives and the responses from social movement has been also very fast and very strong. So I think agriculture and food has these characteristics which I like very much, no? But basically, you know, for you, you know that from the 19th century, more or less, beginning of 20th century, we started with this industrialization of agriculture. But the main thing, it happened already with the birth of the World Trade Organization, in 1994, and everything after that was exponential, no? And we have all this privatization of all the resources, privatization of water, privatization of seeds, the privatization of land, you know, and that have been brought to a limit to have the privatization of life, no? Like, you know, the patents of life, which is like social movement called to the patents of seeds, no? Because seeds is a live material, no? So it's this has a lot of consequences, of course. They also, in terms of free trade, you know, we all, you know, have a lot of focus on export agriculture, no? Like the main type of agriculture we have to develop in our countries to promote development and so on, you know, all this discourse. And then, you know, the deregulation of this sector, which is being promoted by the World Trade Organization and kind of, you know, main actors in this thing. Then promoting as well the minimal regulation of a state, you know, in something as important as agriculture, no? Because agriculture, if you don't have policies in agriculture, and agriculture is the main activity that we need to feed ourselves, right? I mean, and food is a right. It's a kind of, it's not something banal, no? It's a kind, it's a food, it's a human right. So it's very important, and try to these deregulation trends that to minimize, which I'm not going to enter on that, no? Because there is a lot of hypocrisy in this, but because then industrial countries, they know it's important, and so they have a discourse on the side, but then they have practice on the other direction, but this is another thing. And this is where all the individualism, no? That is characteristics of you know, neoliberal, or the capitalist, of general capitalism, that is reflected in supermarkets, for instance, no? You know, the way you buy your food in supermarkets is very individual. You know, you don't go to a market of a farmer market. You don't go to, you know, to a place where you have a relationship with the person that is selling you the food and that is telling, you know, it's a completely different relationship, and I think the supermarket is very, very visual to see this individualism into the agriculture and food, sector, no? In a way, what we have is that food is transformed into a commodity, so that means food is not anymore seen as a human right, but just as a commodity, no? And this I'm going to, because this, what I've done is to separate it by food chain, no? In the inputs part, food production, but just for you to have an idea, no? So in the terms of inputs, we have some impacts, like in energy we use a lot of petrol. It's an agriculture which is dependent on petrol, fossil fuel energy. So in many different parts, no? In organic fertilizers, in machinery, pesticides, and so only in the production part, in the transformation also, in the conservation also, but also in the consumption, because normally we move with the car to buy our food, to go to the supermarket and so on. So it's a kind of, you know, petrol dependent. In terms of water, we have a very intensive use of water. The water is contaminated, so the implications of agriculture and food is very important. And actually, in terms of energy, I didn't put it here, but we know that agriculture is one of the main greenhouse gas emissions. So it's sectors. So it's 40% of 40% of greenhouse gas emissions is being produced by agriculture, and there we can add another 12%, which is the consequence of land changes in land use, which most of it is linked to deforestation, and most of this deforestation, not all of it, but most of it